So please help me welcome my husband, Doug Burgum, and the next president of the United States.
Hopefully this is going to work.
Just in case, help me put it down here. No?
Good evening, everybody. So grateful for all of you to be here tonight. And certainly I want to thank Catherine. Her courage has not only changed lives but saved lives. We've seen that in North Dakota with her work. She's got an effort called Recovery Reinvented. She had the 7th annual Recovery Reinvented just a week ago. Had over 1,000 people show up in person, a couple thousand different IP addresses watching online, so thousands watching. And it's really transforming how we think about programs, not just for mental health, behavioral health, addiction, but also how we think about reentry, criminal justice reform, and all these other things. And this issue couldn't be more important because just since Joe Biden took office, we've had the equivalent of 5 Vietnams of mass casualties. People have died from overdose deaths in our country. It's approaching 275,000 deaths since he took office. 70% of those are fentanyl overdoses. And so the work that she's doing is more important than ever. So let's give it up one more time for the most courageous First Lady. And then speaking of family, I've been campaigning all over Iowa, and I walk in here tonight, and it's the first time that I've been able in Iowa to introduce some relatives of mine, but how very special. Jan Peltier Samuelson is here. Jan, raise your hand up there. Jan's mother and my dad were brothers and sisters, and of course my dad passed away when I was a freshman in high school. After school, sometimes I'd go over to Jan's mom's place with my Aunt Marge, hang out with her when after my mom had gone back to work, and she had moved down to Iowa. But she's very familiar. She grew up in that same hometown, Arthur, North Dakota, that I did. And then her son, Mark Samuelson, who's my age, he and I've been contemporaries our whole lives. But anyway, fun. First time I've had relatives in the room in Iowa, but let's give it up for the Samuelsons. It's great. Okay, there you are with your mask on. Didn't see you behind there. Yeah, okay. All right, well, great to see you as well. So we got more cousins here. Okay, listen, everybody, I'll be quick and then we'll go into some questions, but maybe I won't be quick. There's a lot going on in the world right now. I mean, we're gathered at a time of incredible uncertainty. When we launched our campaign on June 7th, we said that there was 3 things that we were affecting every American life, and that was the economy, that was the energy policy, and that was national security. And these were 3 things that Joe Biden had 100% wrong. We needed a 180-degree course correction to go in a different direction. And wow, have the last 4 months proven that to be true. Because this wasn't the thing that our country was talking about on June 7th when we launched. We were talking about it because we knew that on the economy, inflation is chewing into every family's income. I mean, it is absolutely, it costs $700 more a month today than it did when Joe Biden took office to put food on your table and gas in your car. And if you've had savings, you've been working your whole life to put savings, inflation is an insidious thief in the night that shows up and reaches into your account. And the bank tells you the number is still there, but it just chews up the value of what's in there, and it's taken away 30% of your savings for inflation. And then if you're a younger person, you have a dream of home ownership. Now with interest rates that are pushing 8%, that American dream of home ownership is now out of reach for most people. And so these are, record high inflation, in interest rates, all these things, all self-inflicted. None of this would have happened if we were actually had spending under control. But when you shove trillions of dollars printed, trillions of dollars of deficit spending, shove it into the economy, I can tell you as a business person that this was absolutely going to happen. It's happened. And we can fix it with going in a different direction. But energy, just gets crazier every day. The Biden energy policy, I'm starting to think was written by China. And I'm not just saying that up here to make that's a creative statement, some guy running for office. I can't figure it out. Why in the world would you try to kill the U.S. energy industry with regulations, with new rulemaking, with executive orders? Why would you try to kill the U.S. energy industry, and specifically liquid fuels, of which Iowa plays a big part of with biofuels and ethanol? Why would you try to kill liquid fuels? Why would you try to kill the internal combustion engine and say, no, we're going to replace it with massive tax subsidies to subsidize batteries, subsidize cars? and then the batteries are made in China. And China controls 85% of the rare earth minerals in the world. We're not going to all EVs unless we're shifting our dependence from OPEC to Sinopec. And then it's all under this guise of, or this false promise that somehow if we go to all EVs, it's going to be better for the environment. And the Washington Post wrote an article last week about how China was so superior to us because they were shifting to electric vehicles faster than we were. I read the whole article, and there was never a mention in the article about where the electricity in China was coming from. China is opening up one coal plant a week. A coal plant a week. There's 260 that are permitted right now and more coming in the queue. They will open more coal plants than we have in our country. You could shut down everyone here, destabilize our base, and I'm not talking about some 2023 North Dakota style baseload power plant that uses fossil fuels like lignite coal and it's clean, where we take out the NOx, the SOx, the CO2. I mean, we can deliver clean baseload. These are like 1980 style coal plants that are opening up in China. So they're powering all their fleet over their cars with coal. Why? Because they're the largest importer of oil and gas in the world. They don't want to be dependent on OPEC any more than we should be. They don't want to be dependent on Russian energy and Russian oil and gas. So they're going all electric by going all coal. And so this idea that these Paris Accords, other things where China can keep polluting, they're the largest polluter in the world. The CO2 emissions are higher than anyone else. The country that's lowered CO2 emissions the most is the United States. And now we have a president and his party want to shift our energy future to a country that's the world's largest polluter. It is a lie to the public that their energy policies are better for the environment. If you care about the environment, then you should be like every farmer in Iowa or North Dakota that's been on that ground for multiple generations. You care more about the soil health, you care more about the water, you care more about the air, you care more about everything that's going on that land because you're the owner than some unelected bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. And you would understand that if you cared about the environment, you'd want to have every drop of energy, every electron of electricity produced here, not in China, because we do it cleaner, safer, smarter than anywhere else in the world. We should be selling energy to our friends and allies and stop buying it from our enemies. And lastly, on foreign policy and national security, we can't have national security unless we have food security. We can't have China buying up farmland and the food supplies in our country. If you want to have national security, you have to have border security. We talked about the fentanyl deaths. That fentanyl is coming over the southern border. Joe Biden, I've been to the border more times than Joe Biden has. We've had troops on multiple deployments during my time as governor. I was down there in August. We had 2 different deployments, one helping on the border in Texas, the other one helicopter pilots and leadership organizing a mission where we were flying night vision helicopters, Lakota helicopters, from San Diego to the Gulf Coast in conjunction with the Border Patrol, trying to stop transnational criminal organizations that are doing the human trafficking, the smuggling, and all of the fentanyl that's coming into the country. Guess what? The cartels on the other side, they've got more money, better intelligence, better drones, better everything than we've got because the Biden administration, just like these big blue cities, is effectively defunding the Border Patrol. You talk to the Border Patrol leadership, if they can take early retirement, they have. Why would you stay in an organization where you feel completely unsupported by the leadership in Washington, D.C.? There's only 19,600 people in the Border Patrol. How would I know that? Because I lead a border state. We have 365 miles of border with Canada. We have a bunch of crossings. We have 18. We have the most number of official crossings of any state in the country across North Dakota. Many of them are closed or have limited hours because the Border Patrol staffing is so far down. And they're not hiring. How are you going to hire someone? Because guess what? If you went into the Border Patrol, like many of these folks did that live in Texas, multi-generation law enforcement, just like you'll see police and veterans, where you're in, your family is a law enforcement family, your family is a military family. They're telling the next generation, don't go into this as law enforcement. Why are they saying that to them? Because they don't get to do law enforcement anymore. When I was down there, they literally were doing paperwork. They weren't on the border stopping illegal immigration. They were processing people into the country. How many? Well, 6.5 million have come in since Joe Biden that have been processed. And let's just all think about that for a second. That's the state of Maine, the state of New Hampshire, Vermont, Rhode Island, Delaware, Throw in Montana. Every man, woman, and child in those 6 states, that's what you have to add up. 6 of our states to get to 6.5 million people. That's how many people have come to the United States with asylum seeking. But when you're down there and we're visiting with the Border Patrol, and they've got the key performance indicators up there that they're tracking that aren't being reported by the mainstream media, there's a number up there, and it's called known gotaways. They see them on camera, but there's nobody out there because they're not doing computer work, they're doing paperwork. And those are ones that we see cross the border and they just disappear into our country. That's 1.5 million estimated by what they've seen on cameras. So I asked the question that any tech guy would ask. I said, well, are we sure that we've got eyes on the whole border? Nope, why not? Well, the bad guys take the cameras out. Oh, so the bad guys take the cameras out, and then guess what? That's where they shove a lot of people across. So you have to believe the unknown gotaways is bigger than the known gotaways. And then you say, well, where are the people coming from? They're all coming from Latin America. The one sector I was in Texas, it was more than 100 countries. And people from every country that has an individual on the terrorist watch list. I mean, Syria, Iran, North Korea, Russia, all these countries, they're coming in. These are not just families that are starving, that are trying to get into our country and get away from the corruption in a place like Venezuela. No, they're coming from all over the world because the world knows we have an open border policy. And they also know that the Biden administration says things like, for humanitarian purposes, we're not going to separate families. You've all been told that that would be the thing to do. Well, guess what? Border Patrol literally told me that people come through, and if you want to get through and you're from a country and that's known to have terrorists, bring an adolescent with you. And have that adolescent, may not be your son, may not be your daughter, you have an adolescent with you, and then say, oh, you can't separate me. They're exploiting. Bad guys do this. You create a policy, they'll exploit it. Our family separation policy, we're saying we're not doing it, is being exploited by people that want to get in the country, by human trafficking youth that come with them. So it is just, and then this is never makes the front page, and now with all the international stuff, which is a huge crisis going on, we still have an invasion going on, and we have a mass casualties going on with the fentanyl deaths. So when I'm president, I will be down at the border in the first 2 weeks, not the first 2 years. We'll be down there, and we'll close the border. We'll use diplomatic, informational, military, and economic means to close it, and you will help do that. The senior leaders of the Border Patrol that say, we've closed the border before, Governor Burgum, if you give us the tools, the technology, and the resources, we will close it again. This is not hard. It's just giving law enforcement the support, the respect that they need to do. In North Dakota, every day we say we're going to be the most military-friendly state in the nation. We're going to be the most law enforcement-friendly state in the nation. We need to do that as a country. But also on national security, if we want Americans to be safe and prosperous, then our allies have to be safe and prosperous. And right now, the Biden administration, between the economic policies and the energy policies, they're putting us on the wrong path. I said at the beginning that Jan's mother and my dad were brother and sister. My dad in 1941, when Pearl Harbor happened, in this little town, Arthur, 300 people, gravel roads, the only paved road was the state highway. Wasn't a computer there when I grew up, wasn't any of that. 1941, he went down and signed up in the gym in Castleton and joined the Navy. He'd never seen an ocean. There's no pool in Arthur. There's no lake. There's no river. I'm sure he did not know how to swim, but he signed up to be in the Navy. Because he had a degree from North Dakota State, they made him a naval officer. They called it the 90-day wonders. You got a college degree, you're an officer. As fast as we can build a destroyer, you're on it. Between when he enlisted and when he got shipped off, he proposed and married Mom. They never saw each other till the end of the war. It's only by the grace of God I'm standing here, because in the U.S. military history from the Revolutionary War forward, there have been only 80,000, I shouldn't say 80, but there's 80,000 MIAs, people missing in action, bodies never recovered. 40,000, half of the MIAs in America were World War II Navy sailors. Ships that got hit by kamikazes or taken out by submarines and never seen again. There's 151 destroyers at Okinawa. My dad was on one of those. 129 got hit by kamikazes. His didn't. He made it all the way through, celebrated his 27th birthday on September 2nd, 1945 in Tokyo Bay, got to look across the bay to the USS Missouri where MacArthur was accepting the total surrender of a totalitarian military regime. And what did we do? The best of America? MacArthur stayed for 7 years. We helped Japan write a constitution. We turned them into the largest democracy in the Asia-Pac area. They became the second largest economy in the world and one of our most strategic trading partners. And what do we do for an ally like that now today? Do we support them? Catherine and I were over there in October on a trade mission. They have 126 million people living in a space the size of 2 Iowas. They do not have food security. They got to import food. They have almost zero oil and gas production. They have no energy security. Guess where they could get it from? They could get it from the west coast of North America. They could get it from Alaska. We could be supplying all their energy needs, but Biden won't allow us to even develop energy the way we can in our country in a clean way in the Naval Strategic Petroleum Reserve in Alaska. The Naval Strategic Petroleum Reserve is the size of Indiana, and if you heard that Biden said, oh, we're going to open it up, they opened up the size this year of 2 golf courses in a place the size of Indiana, 2 golf courses worth. We could be supplying energy to the Philippines, to South Korea, and to Japan, our allies, but instead they have to kowtow to the Middle East and to China and everybody else. And guess what? They're buying that energy from someone who's supplying it. It's not as clean as ours. Not helping the environment, not helping our allies, not stabilizing the world. Why did Putin invade Ukraine? He invaded Ukraine because we allowed all of Western Europe to become dependent on Russian energy. And why did Hamas feel like they could attack Israel? Well, obviously, it's their whole reason for the Iranian regime is death to America and death to Israel. I mean, that's what they exist for. But they're the parent company, the subsidiary, Hamas and Hezbollah, get funding from Iran. Who's funding Iran? Joe Biden. We released $10 billion of assets to them in June, and you didn't hear about it because it was on page 38. You might have heard about 3 weeks ago that we did this crazy $6 billion hostage trade where we traded 5 of ours for 5 of theirs, but we had to throw in $6 billion. Would any of your grandkids ever cut that deal when they're like, trading for Halloween candy, 5 for 5, but I got to throw in $6 billion? Nobody does that. And a president, rule number 1, don't negotiate with terrorists. He's negotiating with terrorists. Iran is the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism. We gave them all of this money, and then there's also oil sanctions against Iran, and the Biden administration quietly is not enforcing them this summer. Their oil exports shot up this summer. Who's buying it? China. China's refilling their petroleum reserve. Biden drained ours in half ahead of the midterms. That's not strategic. That's political. He's trying to get the price of the pump down because he knows when the price of the pump is high, his ratings are low, and when the price is low, his ratings get higher. So he's manipulating our national security in an effort to try to win elections. That's so political and so selfish because it's not thinking about us and our future. So I say, again, whose drones are killing Ukrainians? Iranian drones. Iran sells weapons to Russia. Russia uses those against us. We're funding Iran. So Joe Biden is funding both sides of the Russian-Ukraine war, and he's funding both sides of the Hamas-Israeli conflict. I put those wars at Joe Biden's feet, and I would tell you, when I'm your president, we will actually do what Ronald Reagan did. We will actually have peace through strength. We will have deterrence that work. We will not negotiate with terrorists. We will make sure that the oil sanctions that are actually funding all this activity, with sanctions will be in place and will work, and if people need energy, they can get it from the United States, which will create American jobs, it'll create world and global stability, and the environment will be better. You pick. It's a win-win-win-win for us, and right now, the energy policy is a win for China. It's a win for totalitarian dictators like Putin and like the regime in Iran, and if that's not enough, well, you weren't paying attention this week because they slipped it in the middle of all this Israeli stuff. They took the sanctions off of Venezuela, who's got some of the dirtiest oil in the world, and Venezuela now is going to start exporting 600,000 or 700,000 barrels of oil this week. It's in the news because they promised that next year they might hold more democratic elections. The way you negotiate with someone, you say, release all your political prisoners and then we'll think about it, but you act first. We're allowing them to start driving billions of dollars of revenue on the promise they might do something later. This is a dictator, Maduro in Venezuela, that's driven 7.5 million people out of their country during the time that he's been in office. Human rights violations that would make your skin crawl. So it is absolutely unbelievable what's going on. So back to the beginning. Economy, energy, national security, 180 degrees in the wrong direction. When I'm your president, we're going to fix all that. And thank you. And with that, I'd love to take some questions. And I got a hand up right over here, sir. The question was, how will I dismantle the deep state? Well, I don't want to say it's easy because it's hard, but there's something that absolutely will do, and that is the President of the United States, and understand my background as a business guy, running operations at scale. I literally, when my dad died, I got 160 acres of farm ground. I bet the farm on a software company. We started with 10 people. We grew it to 2,000 people. That 2,000 person company became part of a 40,000 person company. I stayed there. We grew that from 40,000 to 90,000 people. I went on to help, be the chairman or CEO of other global software companies. I've had people working for me in 132 countries. I've had people working for me that didn't have the right to vote, didn't have the right to assemble, didn't have the right to free speech. When I was a kid in 1989, I was in China and for the first time on business, and I saw that they were stealing all of our software that we were making in Fargo. We had a 5 1/4-inch floppy for $1 at a street market. Some of the guys I'm running against are just, at first debate, no one mentioned China. I was the only one that said we're in a Cold War with China, we're in a proxy war with Russia, now we're in a proxy war with Iran. I was literally the only one on a Republican debate that mentioned China in the first debate. And so, but what does this have to do with the deep state? It has to do with, when I look down that stage, no one else on the debate stage, I've created more jobs than all of them put together. I'm not bragging, I'm just telling you that's a fact. I've created more jobs than all of them together. I've been making payroll since my mid-20s. There's people on that stage that have never signed the front of a paycheck. They've only signed the back of one. And so what does that say? This is an organizational competence question. And I'll tell you one thing Obama did right. There's 4,000 appointees the president get to make. About 1,200 require senatorial approval. When he came in, the day he took office, the next day, 4,000 Obama appointees showed up. And they jammed through all of those appointments. And guess what? They were there for 8 years. And then when President Trump, who I voted for twice, when he took office, read about it. Read the book. There's books about it. When he took office, there was no transition plan. There was we'll figure it out. And I know that. I worked with cabinet leaders. I was elected as a governor. There was people that should have had 80 appointments, and they were 2 years into their thing, and they only had 40 of them. You can't fight the deep state if you don't get the 4,000 leaders in place, and they were not ready to go. There's an actual concept called year zero. January of this year, our team will be working on starting on the transition plan for next year. We will be identifying who those 4,000 people are. We will come in, and we will replace all that leadership at the top, because that's how you cut it off at the top. You got to change the leadership. And then the second thing we're going to do is follow the 10th Amendment, because the 10th Amendment says these are the specific duties of the federal government. The Biden administration, Obama administration overreach on everything. I see it as a small business person, a large business person, as a governor. They're constantly overreaching. We are fighting over 20 Biden initiatives in North Dakota right now. We appropriate separate money for lawsuits. Waters of the USA, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, there's 4 different battles we're taking on. Bureau of Land Management, there's about 6. EPA, another 6. The states, the Republican states, have got to keep the fight up to keep pushing back on the Biden administration. This is not going to be a new thing for me. This is what we're doing right now. I'm going to go over here and I'll come back more. Sir? Well, it's going to be the title of a book by my friend Chris Liddell. Chris Liddell worked in the Trump administration. He and I worked together in the software industry. He's one of the experts on transitions, and his book's coming out in January, but talks about the essential need for Republicans. If we're winning the White House, you got to be ready to show up with an entire team on day one and start, goodbye, accept resignations, 4,000 people gone, 4,000 new people in at the top, and then you work from there. But I would also tell you, as someone we took 27% out of the cost of the general fund in North Dakota my first 4 months in office. First 4 months in office, 2017. Not slowed growth, 27%. We dropped it by 27%. $1.7 billion we took out of it. And you can do that because inside of every government job, there's 10, 20% or more of the work that is some mind-numbing, soul-sucking work that even the most dedicated, most conservative, ideologically aligned state employees or federal employees, They don't want to do it because they know it's not adding a value. And we just get up every day and we say, look, hey, it's innovation, not regulation. We're going to get rid of red tape. We're going to get rid of regulation. We're going to get rid of the stuff that you don't want to do and that citizens don't care about. And then we passed 51 more red tape reduction bills this year in North Dakota this spring. And now we're crowdsourcing ideas from the public, where you can give us your ideas. How does it affect your family, your small business? What can we do to get government out of your way? And we've got to get the federal government back in the lane. The federal government just keeps adding and adding and adding. We've got to turn it around and go exactly the opposite direction. And then we've got to get people to fill jobs that actually then have meaning and purpose. Because if you want to, people, oh, I hate government workers. Do you hate the highway patrol? No, I don't hate the highway patrol. How about biologists that, help make sure that all of our lakes are stocked with amazing fisheries in North Dakota? Come on up, stock 425 lakes. I like those guys. But a lot of them are like, hey, I'm going to quit and go to the private sector. I mean, we have to figure out a way to have meaningful jobs for people that make a difference for things that need to be done, but it can be a lot less cost. We've shown that in our state, and wow, the opportunity, because nobody's invested in IT. They're like 30 years behind. When I got into office, I found out that somebody was receiving faxes. In 2017, I went to we hired a new chief information officer from the outside that came in, who'd had a huge scale job at a really large company, larger than the state of North Dakota. And I said, can you find out how many fax machine lines are coming into our state? And he came back like the next day and he goes, there's like 170 of them. There's 170 fax machines. I said, really? Great. So I went to the guys and said, why do we still have those? They said, well, the legislature won't appropriate any money for us to actually automate stuff. So I went to the legislators, who are all farmers. They're all good guys. We have a part-time citizen legislature. I said, any of you guys, shop at Amazon? Oh, yeah, we do. Kind of sheepishly. But yeah, I live 90 miles out of town. I don't want to drive. I'm order on Prime. They deliver to my yard. Of course, I need a part. I order it. It's here the next day. I'm like, okay, have you guys ever faxed anything to Amazon? Legislators, no. Have you ever called them and talked to their thing? No. Who does the data entry? You do when you're shopping at Amazon. And you do it every place else. Why are we paying state employees to actually do data entry? Why are we letting people fax this stuff? So, and then we went, and then you go across the whole state. If you got a fishing license, a driver's license, you got a boat license, your kids are in school, you've paid taxes, okay, you got another kid that's going to a university, like name all the ways that you interact with the state. Every single time you came to us, it was a different website with a different sign on, with a different whatever, and nobody would shop online. If every time you showed up, they'd go, who are you? Please enter all your stuff again. No, you do it because it's one click. So we're moving towards single sign-on towards all of our citizens. And I bet you everybody in this room's got a smartphone. Does anybody in this room have an app on their phone from the federal government? Of course not. Because we pay trillions to run this thing, and it's being run like a 1980s operation. So the opportunity to take cost out when someone actually knows how to do it is like unbelievable. Cost and people. And if we could lower the number of federal employees by 20% and get them all back in the private sector. Think that instead of our taxes paying for them, they'd be in the private sector earning and helping pay taxes. So I know we can get it done because we're doing it. Ma'am? Well, some of that's I'm sure going to have to be decided state by state, and so it's if it's somebody making a promise, which is, and I don't make promises that I know I can't keep, but I'll tell you what we've done in North Dakota. We've got the strictest anti-corporate farming laws in America. No U.S. corporation can own land in North Dakota. No foreign corporation can own farmland in North Dakota, and no foreign political party like the CCP can own land in North Dakota. And those laws have been in place for over 100 years. And then we strengthened this year to specifically call out China and make sure that you can't do that. And it's so extreme that if you and I wanted to farm together and start a corporation, we couldn't, because I could with Jan because I'm related to her. We're first cousins. First cousins can farm together, but you can't if you're not related. You can't do that. So other states could do the same thing. You could probably do some federal executive orders to do it. Getting it back if they've legally purchased it, 10, 20, 30 years ago, could be hard. But we've got to make sure that we're not passing over our food production and our food security to a country that we're in a Cold War with right now, a country that's stealing all of our IP. like I said, they've stolen every piece of software I've been involved with. We can't be naive about that. And then we let them into the World Trade Organization, China. When you become a member of the World Trade Organization, you get privileges, but you also have responsibilities. Those responsibilities include that you basically agree that you will follow international trademark, intellectual property rules. So they say, yep, let us in, we'll have all the advantages. Oh, but we're not going to follow any of the rules. We're just going to keep stealing hundreds of billions of dollars a year technology every year. That's just theft, which is going on. So that all has to stop. But we've had 4 Biden officials go to China this year. None of them have talked about energy. Like I said, this is a country that imports more oil and gas than anyone else in the world. The number one tool we would have is we're energy dominant, they're energy insecure. Let's have a conversation. We export food. They have to import. They have to import calories every day to feed those 1.4 million people. They're food insecure. We have these 2 giant tools that Iowa and North Dakota and others know about. We got a bunch of people that aren't from the Midwest, down in D.C. that can't figure out how to actually have a negotiation with China around the things that would matter most to their future, food and energy. And we hold all the cards, but instead, we're talking to them about, CO2 emissions and then letting them increase while we're trying to decrease. We're trying to be energy poor while they're becoming energy rich. It makes no sense. Put somebody in charge of those negotiations that actually understands how the global economy works. Sir, and then back to you.
Governor, my wife and I are both retired Army officers. I joined the Army at 18, airborne infantry all the way. I was going to ask you about Taiwan, but I'm not going to do that because that's really too easy a question about what you would do about Taiwan. As I watch you today, and we've been very fortunate. We've worked around the world. Mary Lou worked in the White House for a while. I see a different person than I've seen on the debate stage. I haven't heard you on the debate stage look down and aggressively attack the people on that stage, not from what they haven't done, but from what you've done. For example, I've created more jobs than all of you on this stage, and here's how I did it. So why don't you use that approach? That's my question.
Well, first of all, I want to say he was sharing that he and Mary Lou both served in the military, so I would want to take a minute and if there's anybody here that's a veteran that can stand, or raise your hand if you can't, but let's acknowledge all the veterans in the room. If you guys stand up, all the veterans. There you are. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for your service. Well, the question was, when I got into this race, we're unknown. I'm the underdog. People don't know who we are. And when I was starting a Great Plains Software, and I went to the first trade show, and I got there, and I mortgaged the farm, bet the farm on the company, went to the first trade show, Comdex. And I had done all my research, and I was sure there was at least 8 accounting software companies trying to serve this mid-market. I got there and opened the trade show book. There was 53 companies. I'm like, whoops. But there's no internet. Do the research. But there was market leaders. We were unknown. I didn't start out the first day and tell everybody that walked into the booth about how bad everybody else was. We had to tell them about how good we are. So we are trying to tell the story, as you say, about what strengths we bring to this thing. But I've felt from the beginning, I'm running against Joe Biden. I'm not running against necessarily the other people on the stage. What is good for the Republican Party is competition, and what's good is good ideas. And as we become more well known, there's an opportunity to create differentiation, like I'm sharing with all of you tonight, talking about our strengths as opposed to talking about other people's weaknesses, because I think people will figure that out over time. But I appreciate the encouragement for sure. But I would say about presidential debates, they used to have a lot of gravitas. These were important issues. That they were designed to help the American public, all of you concerned voters that come to something like this, like people across Iowa, that they come out, they spend time, they spend an evening to try to understand not one candidate, but multiple candidates. You're the ones that are actually driving the decision for America. What's happening in this room right now, best of America. This is so important to maintaining democracy, what you're doing, and you're participating in. And you should go home and look at the mirror and say, I'm making a difference in this country because you're here tonight. But on that stage, what they're trying to generate is inter-candidate conflict. because that's what sells for that network. It's a business model for them. It's not about helping voters decide. It's like, no, if we can get it down to a little, TikTok soundbite of two people pointing fingers at each other and calling each other's names, then they're just celebrating. They're like, fantastic. So I know that I didn't get called on as much in the first debates because they know that in every interview I've had with them before leading up to the debates, I'm not attacking the former president. I'm not attacking the other candidates. And they're like, wow, this guy's got way too much message discipline. We tried to bait him into criticizing people 18 different ways, and he keeps talking about real issues. That's a problem. Why is he talking about real issues? We want him to talk about other candidates. So I think people are figuring out, but I also know that you wouldn't use a process like they design and call a presidential bait to pick your granddaughter's third grade soccer coach. You wouldn't put 6 people up and go, who can throw the fastest insult and get in the quickest argument? That's the one that I want coaching my granddaughter's team. You wouldn't do that for a superintendent. You wouldn't do it for a pastor. You wouldn't do it for a CEO, and you damn sure shouldn't do it for the President of the United States. But that's what they want all of us to think is a presidential debate. It's not. It's not even political theater. It's actually reality TV. They're trying to create real-time reality TV conflict because that's how they try to save their dying media models. But I'm not part of that. I'm working for all of you every day, as opposed to trying to help some network. We had back here in the middle, sir. Well, I'm for helping agriculture, I'm for helping oil and gas, and I'm for helping baseload energy. And all three of those industries benefit, and the people that grow the crops and own the land around those facilities and the people that own the mineral rights, all of them benefit when we've got low carbon intensive fuels. The controversy about the pipeline in these states is confusing to me because I hear all kinds of misinformation. In North Dakota, we've been doing CO2 capture and transportation for 23 years. The first pipeline that we opened up was around year 2000. We've moved 42 million tons without incident safely from North Dakota up into Canada for enhanced oil recovery. We opened a new one, I say we, but it was a private company, capturing all the CO2 off a gas plant in Wyoming, comes through Montana and comes to southwestern North Dakota. They put it down these 1980 oil wells, and they're putting more CO2 down, because when you compress it, it becomes a liquid. They put it down, that pressure forces oil and gas out. We got an oil company that's got a net negative carbon barrel of oil. They're greener than Patagonia in terms of all the advertising that Patagonia talks about. We have an oil company that's greener. So liquid fuels, decarbonizing liquid fuels, that's Team USA. You want to be on Team EV, that's Team China. And so I am on Team USA from an energy production standpoint, and this really helps, but it's getting conflated. There are people that are against the pipeline because they're against the U.S. energy. They're against fossil fuels. They're against liquid fuels. They're against Team USA. But they're matching up with people that are saying, hey, I'm worried about eminent domain. Well, I'm a landowner. I own farmland. I own ranch land. I'm a landowner. I'm for property rights. So if you don't want a pipeline, do what we've done in North Dakota, because we've put in like 40,000 miles of pipeline since the Bakken opened up, because you can't have an oil and gas industry in this country and move it all by truck on highways. You've got to have pipelines. It's the safest, cheapest, smartest, easiest way to manage all of the flows of materials that come from that industry, and do what people in North Dakota, if you don't want to take a big check for an easement for a pipeline, then just say so and let your neighbor take the big check, as opposed to start using Sierra Club language to say that somehow with a bunch of misinformation that the thing shouldn't be there in the first place. Because people that want to get a big check for a pipeline, they've got property rights too. So I just say the free market's going to sort it out. I'm for people taking it that want it, and I'm for us supporting our industries in this country, because I know in North Dakota when we have an opportunity to help agriculture, oil and gas, and baseload electricity generation, which most people are trying to kill their baseload electricity. We provide electricity which makes its way to Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, and all the way to Michigan and North Dakota. Without that baseload, get ready to just have. You'll be heading the way Minnesota is. They passed their own brownout blackout bill this year, where they said you can't sell fossil fuel baseload in Minnesota after a certain date. That's illegal. We'll sue them. We'll win. But it's just crazy, because we can't keep prematurely shutting down baseload and then think we're going to power all the things that we need to power. There's an increased demand for power in our country, an increased demand for power in the world, and we have to figure out a way to provide that. And that's one of the tools. Sir?
You kind of had a mixed message. there just a little bit. Eminent domain, yes or no? I'm all for, say, the pipeline. I'm on your side as far as if you want it, take the money. If you don't want it, you're kind of saying route it around me. In Iowa here, one of the things that's happened with the carbon pipeline and the backend is they're kind of coming in, calling it a utility, and they're taking eminent domain. So you get what percentage of people that are for something like that? Because this is a private company who makes private dollars that's going to use eminent domain in states like Iowa. At what point do you say, if 95% agree to it, we eminent domain the rest, or just call it a utility and we take it if we want it? Because that's kind of where some of the, at least the people I know, are against it, is taking it if they're against it. Let the neighbor take the money, but obviously you can't have a pipeline that does this all the way across the country. So there has to be a point somewhere that you take what's left, you reasonably try and accommodate, and so on. Where's your stance on that?
Well, actually, when I look at the pipelines in North Dakota, you can have a lot of zigs and zags, and I know that, whether it's a Dakota Access Pipeline, which is coming down this way, privately owned by a company, transmission lines, they're owned by private companies. I mean, there's a ton of infrastructure in our country that is owned by private companies. So I hear that, and I'm just like, that isn't an argument per se. Because without private companies aggregating capital, we wouldn't have the infrastructure we need to power our homes and power our cars and heat our homes and all that. And again, I think there's been something like 2,000 changes made in the pipeline erection or whatever. So I still think markets are greater. Your idea of a threshold, that's going to get decided state by state. In North Dakota, we've got a supermajority rule in North Dakota. We've been permitting the places where the CO2 gets stored. We've defined in law that the people that own the pore space underground are the ranchers and the farmers on the top. We've permitted a couple of storage areas. One's 32 square miles, another one's 50 square miles, and over 90% of the people voted that they wanted for it. Some of the ones were not necessarily against it. How do you trying to find the landowners trying to find it? But in our law, guess what they get paid? The ones that didn't sign up get paid the highest amount that anybody else get paid. So they don't have to hire a lawyer. Lawyers go to them and say, oh, you need me, you need a lawyer to help you get the best price. We've got it in law. You don't need the lawyer. If you're just going to wait till the end and hold out for the best price, in North Dakota, you're protected. You get the best price. And so we can't get Americans to agree on 90% of anything. We got 92% of North Dakotans in a 32 square mile. That's every acre, 92% of the acres in that size of an area saying, yep, we want mailbox money for CO2 storage that's going to be happening 7,000 feet underground. So I know that this can all get worked out by the marketplace. The state of North Dakota has nothing to do with it. That's private companies talking to landowners, and I'm not even part of that. I'm just watching the results come at the end and go, wow, they got 92%. I would take that. I mean, we won by over 40 points a couple times, but we were in the 70s. Catherine and I never got to the 90s. When we were getting reelected by the largest margins in the country. But I would think that would be, because at some point, if you got 92% of the people, then the 8% are actually exerting their power on the vast, vast majority. At some point, majority rules in our country, and you guys, each state can pick their threshold, but democracy has evolved around majority rules. Yeah, thank you. Over here, sir. I'll take a couple more, and then I know we're going to stick around, shake hands, take pictures, and do all that. So this may be my last question, then some closing comments.
You've all seen how the Democratic Party sticks together. About a week ago, Mark Levin made a statement on his program that the Republicans have been neutered. How would you reunite the Republican Party?
Question was, how would we reunite the Republican Party? And I think you're kind of referring to Congress, but this is sad for me when I see we get a thin margin that we win by as a party in Washington, D.C. We have an opportunity to lead, and I'm telling you, when we fast forward to 2024 November, the Democrats they will beat up on us, and it won't be about policy. They'll say when they had the majority, they could not figure out a way to lead. So it gets back to leadership. We have to figure out, I mean, if you agree with someone 80, 90% of the time, you're on the same team. I mean, some people have said to me, apparently that Republicans don't have an interest in actually governing. Part of running isn't just to run, it's to run and actually then govern and do things that help people and improve the quality of life and lift people up. Our future could be so bright in this country, the mass flourishing, what we have. If you're under 25 and you're in this room, thanks for coming. But get ready to live to be 100. Get ready to live to be 100. I mean, we're going to solve entire disease classes in the next 10 years. The amount of opportunity we have, and we never get to talk about it. I know it's there. I've seen the technology. I know what's being invested. We don't talk about what's great about America. We talk about what's wrong, and then we fight about these things, and we have to lead. We have to be a party that's willing to lead. And guess what? You can't win a presidential election, and you can't win, with gerrymandering, you can. With gerrymandering, you can win an election and have only your people in your party vote for you. But you want to win a national election? Guess what we need? We need some independents. There's not enough registered Republicans. We're outnumbered nationally, Democrats, Republicans. If we run on a platform where the goal is to get 100% of every Republicans agreeing, guess what? We lose every election. We have got to figure out how to have a tent that includes differing views within the Republican Party, and that we get some more people to come with us if we want to run the country. Otherwise, we can just keep fighting with each other and watch, Joe Biden's policies on the economy, energy, and national security go. And when I said earlier about the 4,000 people, guess what? When we didn't get rid of those people during the Trump administration, they're still there today. There are Obama appointees that are in their fourth term. That's who's driving this country right now. That's why we have an onslaught in a state like North Dakota pushing back on all these federal rules and regulations. It's not coming out of Congress. They bypass Congress. They just jam it down on us with red tape. And so again, we have leadership. Your question, what would I do? Well, I would do what I've done my whole life, which is you have to create a vision and say, this is where we're going. Are you with us? This is where we're going. Here's about the future. We're not the party of the past. Presidential elections are about the future. We can paint a picture of where we can go as a country. We can make the world more stable. We can make America more prosperous. We can solve the economic issues. But it's going to take somebody who actually understands how the economy works. Somebody who growing up, working on the farm, working on the ranch, working as at the grain elevator, and then working as a chimney sweep to pay my way through college. I took showers at the end of the day. I wasn't someone who, we got people that have never had a job where you take a shower at the end of the day trying to run this country. And so respect for the military, respect for law enforcement, respect for the Constitution. These are things that we can actually deliver on. And respect for free speech, which means we respect free speech, which means there's going to be some speech we don't like. But we have to respect the part of the Constitution. So anyway, I believe our future is unbelievably bright, but it's going to take leadership. And the last thing I'll tell you about being in the executive branch, I will never be a congressman. I will never be a senator. Never. I have zero interest. I'm not a politician. I'm an elected leader. I've spent my life building value for shareholders and building companies and creating great jobs and solving problems that other people couldn't be solved. They told me you could never build a global software company with a bunch of kids from small towns. We had kids from over 220 small towns across North Dakota that helped build that company. And we ended up with 1,200 in Fargo, 400 team members in the rest of North America, 400 rest of the world. We did that, and when people said it couldn't be done, they told Catherine and I, you couldn't become governor because you're down 60 points and it's 5.5 months. We did it. Now people are telling me, oh, you'll never, you never win this race. Of course we have. This race is just getting started. Of course we have a chance because when you get down to the last 3 or 4 people and none of them have worked in the private sector, you think America might wake up and go, let's go with the guy that's actually done it, that understands how the globe works, understands technology, understands energy, understands agriculture. How about that? Can you believe they asked me a question about farming and ranching at the last debate? In my head, I was like, why don't you ask some of the people that have never been on a farm and ranch? I grew up doing that. Of course I can answer that question. If you actually want to help the American people, ask somebody who has never been on a ranch, who's never branded a calf, someone who's never driven a combine, someone who's never hoed beets, someone who's never walked a sunflower field. Pick anything I've done my whole life, growing up and still involved with now with the family farm and with the ranch operation. It's like, ask them. But it's just, there's so much disrespect, I have to say, for the coast, for what goes on in places like Iowa and North Dakota. Absolutely. And so I want people to know I'm out there fighting for all of you every single day, because what we do in these communities, what we do in this country, the people that get together and feed the world and fuel the world, they're the difference makers. And that's why I'm on the stage. That's why I'm running, because someone's got to stand up and say, this is what it's going to take. A little common sense from the Midwest, from small town understanding. In small towns, neighbors help people. That's part of what happens. That's the country I know, and that's the country we can be. Thank you very much, and I'll look forward to talking to you tonight. Sir, we'll talk one-on-one. Thank you. Come on up and we'll talk one-on-one. Thanks, everybody. And the last thing is there are some caucus cards here. There's literature here. We'd love to have you join on our mailing list. We'd love to have you join us to caucus with us. And is there any closing comments here from the GOP? Okay, all right. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for coming tonight. Appreciate it.